So heroes are freaks. Heroes see strength where everyone else sees weakness. I've always been a bit of a freak. The first thing that people ask when they meet me is, how tall are you? The answer to that is I'm 6'6", but I'm 6'9" in heels. And one of the problems with growing up tall and growing up poor, I grew up in a trailer park in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, is you grow up faster than your family's ability to get you pants. So I always had high water pants or floods. My pants never made it all the way down to the floor. And my mom knew I was getting teased at school. She knew it hurt my feelings. She wanted me to feel better. She told me they were capri pants and they were coming back in style. That turned out not to be true. I'm 6'6". My wife of 22 years is just 5'3". If you wonder how that works, just realize that in our relationship, deodorant is more important than breath mints. So my idea this morning is really simple. It's that what makes us weird also makes us wonderful, and what makes us weak also makes us strong. What makes us weird also makes us wonderful. What makes us weak also makes us strong. It's good to be tall. Right? We pay tall people more than we pay smaller people for the same work. We vote for taller people in elections. Right? We think that taller people, studies show that we think that taller people have higher IQs. I think they do, but science disagrees with me. Right? So it's good to be tall until it's not, and it's not good to be tall on airplanes. I fly a lot. I had to fly across the country to get here, but I don't live in a major city, so I start at a small airport, which means I start on a small plane, a regional jet. If you don't know what a regional jet is, it's like a Fisher-Price airplane. And every time I go to get on the plane, the flight attendant says the same thing. She says, "Sir, you need to watch your head," which is hard to do if you've ever tried. And I get on the airplane like this, right? And some of you are like, well, we've ducked before. You have, but you're used to re-emerging on the other side. I don't get to re-emerge. I just shuffle like a hobbit to my seat. But I fly a lot, and so I get that exit row, or I get economy comfort. I get the first class upgrade. I'm okay until I have to go to the bathroom. And if you don't fit in the middle of the plane, you certainly don't fit on the side of the plane where they put these bathrooms. And some people think I've exaggerated this next part, which is why I've taken the liberty of an airplane bathroom selfie. So I get into the airplane bathroom and I close the door behind me. I can't be sure that it's locked because I can't turn around to see it, but we hope for the best. And now it's time to go to the bathroom, but I'm here and the toilet's over there and I have things that need to go in the toilet. So I try to move closer, but the ceiling goes like this. And so I just get closer and closer and closer to the toilet. And that's not what I'm looking for. So I've developed something I call the limbo yoga approach. What I do is I press my face into the ceiling. And then I try to match my upper body to the shape of the side of the airplane, just kind of press it in there as I move my lower body in and rotate. Now the problem is there's not a lot of visual information now about what's about to happen. And so as I was trying to work through that problem one time, I looked at that little tiny mirror that they have, and I thought maybe I could do some targeting if I could just get a reflection. And as I was looking at that little tiny mirror, I had a bigger revelation, which is that there's a sink right there. That is a whole lot higher and a whole lot closer. That seems custom designed for what needs to happen here. When people ask me about being tall, they ask a simple question: is it good or bad to be tall? Is it a strength or a weakness to be tall? And that story is designed to demonstrate that you can't accept the advantages of height without also accepting the disadvantages of height. Height is good and height is bad. It's an upside and it's a downside. And I think every one of our qualities is like that. Every characteristic we have is a strength and a weakness at the same time. When I was a kid, I had a lot of weaknesses. I was always in trouble at school because I couldn't sit still, be quiet, and do what I was told. Teachers called me obnoxious, rebellious, inappropriate, immature, told me I had no self-discipline and no self-control, and if I didn't fix those things, I was going to end up homeless and living in a van down by the river. Sooner or later, they'd send me to the principal's office. I remember I was in third grade, so I was 8 years old. I got sent to the principal's office. He sat me down in his lap, which seems questionable now looking back on it. And he told me about three kinds of bad people, really bad people, and people who are too far gone. And he told me I was a really bad kid on the verge of being too far gone if I couldn't learn to sit still, be quiet, and do what I was told. And I'm not the only one who had trouble at school. Ken Robinson says many highly talented, brilliant, creative people think they're not, because the thing they were good at school wasn't valued or was actually stigmatized. The thing they were good at, their strength, wasn't valued, it was ignored or denied, or it was actually stigmatized. We told them that the best thing about them was the worst thing about them, that their biggest strength was actually a weakness. And I realized that's what happened to me because I was in trouble my whole life, even as an adult, because I couldn't sit still, be quiet, and do what I was told. And now I get paid to travel around the world doing three things: standing up, not sitting down; talking, not being quiet, and running my own business, not doing what other people tell me to do. And I started to wonder if my weaknesses were also strengths. I wonder if other people also have weaknesses that are strengths, and I discovered that they do. George Eliot said, every limit is a beginning as well as an ending, so I'm going to show you the beginnings that come with the limits that we have. Let's just pick one. Let's pick dyslexia. Right? They were doing a study in the United Kingdom of millionaires, and they discovered that 50% of the millionaires in their study had dyslexia, even though only 10% of people in the general population have dyslexia. They were doing a study of entrepreneurs in the United States and discovered that 35% of the entrepreneurs had dyslexia, even though only 10% of people in the general population have dyslexia. Ingvar Kamprad, the billionaire founder of IKEA, has dyslexia. Richard Branson, the billionaire founder of the Virgin series of companies, has dyslexia. But the story that we've been told is, they overcame that challenge. They overcame their dyslexia, and that's when they succeeded, and that's not the story. When they asked Richard Branson, how has dyslexia affected your success? He said, strangely, I think my dyslexia has helped. I succeeded because of my dyslexia, not in spite of it. What scientists are starting to realize is that people with dyslexia don't have broken brains, they have different brains. And the same brain that causes them to struggle at school causes them to succeed in life at a higher level than most of the rest of us ever will. Paul Orfila got kicked out of 4 high schools because of his dyslexia and ADHD. So he went to work for family-owned businesses and then was promptly fired by his own mom and dad and brothers and sisters. So he started his own company right here in California. You probably never heard of it, called Kinko's. And recently he sold it to FedEx for $2.4 billion. And he said this, he said, I think everyone should have dyslexia. Right? He sees that you can't have the peak without the valley. You can't have the advantage without the disadvantage. You can't have the success without the negative. He wouldn't give up. They've asked him, would you take a pill that would cure your dyslexia? And he said, absolutely not. Because in losing the disadvantage, I'd also lose the advantage. What makes us weird also makes us wonderful. What makes us weak also makes us strong. When I was a kid, I also got sent to school with patches on my pants, and that was unacceptable, so I got a job delivering newspapers at 5 o'clock every morning. And one morning when I was 12, I fell off my bike and I broke my left arm, compound fracture, where the lower part of my forearm came up at a 90-degree angle to the rest of my forearm. They took me to the hospital. They didn't want to do surgery because I was so young, so they put it in traction, put me in a cast for 3 months, and sent me home. I came back, they took the cast off, they told me I was fine, and I thought I was fine until 8 years later I was in college, and my friend Carl was playing the guitar, and I said, Carl, show me how to play the guitar. And he tried, and I couldn't do anything he showed me. And he thought I was stupid, and I thought I was stupid. And then we realized something. They put me back together wrong at the hospital. You should be able to do this. This is called supination. This is called pronation. Palm flat to the ceiling, palm flat to the floor. I can do pronation with my left arm, but I can't do supination at all. And I realized in that moment why I had struggled at the drive-thru for so many years. I thought we were all struggling at the drive-thru. I thought this was a common human struggle, but it turns out it was just me because I can pay them just fine. It's when they go to give me the change, right? And they're like, sir, you need to turn your hand over. I'm like, okay. But you also need to reach out. I'm like, I was reaching it out, right? My sister-in-law said I need to get a basket on a stick and just kind of reach it in there, right? But I go to Australia a lot and do presentations. And in Australia, they drive on the left-hand side of the road, which means that they drive on the right-hand side of the car, right? And when I went to Australia, does anybody know the first place that I drove when I drove in Australia? I drove to the drive-thru, right? Because I wanted to know what it felt like to reach my right arm out of the window, right? Fully extended and perfectly flat, and accept the change and bring it safely back into the vehicle like all of you have been taking for granted for so many years, right? When I'm in Australia, I'm still broken. Right? My arm doesn't work. It's still disabled. It still doesn't function, but I function perfectly, not because I've changed who I am, but because I've changed where I am. You see, situations are powerful. In some situations, can put the spotlight on the best things about us. In other situations, can put the spotlight on the worst things about us. And sometimes when things aren't working, we say, I need to change. When oftentimes we don't need to change, what we need to do is change the situation. We need to put ourselves into positions that put the spotlight on the best things about us and take the spotlight off the worst things about us. We need to stop trying to change the person, and we need to look for opportunities to change the place. There's a company called Specialistern in Denmark, and Thorkild Sohn founded it after his son was diagnosed with autism, and he realized that his son had hyperfocus, and he did the same thing over and over. Those were the symptoms of his autism, hyperfocus, doing the same thing over and over again. And he realized that in software testing, you need two things from a good software tester. You need someone with hyper-focus who can do the same thing over and over again. So he built a software testing company that hire exclusively people with autism on purpose, not as a government agency, not as a nonprofit, as a for-profit business. They've been so successful changing the place, not the person, showing that people with this disability actually have a competitive advantage when you change the location, that SAP, the global software giant, is currently looking for hundreds of people with autism from all over the world to do software testing for them. We'll wrap up. Thank you. We'll wrap up with one last example. This is the Leaning Tower of Pisa. If you're not sure what's wrong with it, it's leaning. It's been leaning for 845 years, since 1173. But Mussolini in the 1930s decided that this was a scar on the reputation of his country, that this made his country look bad, and so he ordered his government engineers to straighten it up, and they tried and they failed. And that was a really lucky thing for the city of Pisa, wasn't it? Because you see, millions of people have traveled millions of miles and spent millions of dollars to see a tower that leans. And the people who run the tower now finally understand that, and they say that because of its inclination, the tower has become the object of very special attention. That's what I'm telling you. That because of your inclination, because of your uniqueness that oftentimes looks like weakness, that's how you become the object of very special attention. It's not in spite of it. Right? It's not by overcoming it. It's by preserving it. They say that they need to keep the current tilt due to the vital role that this element played in promoting the tourism industry of Pisa. We live in a world that loves to straighten things up and straighten things out, and I want us to preserve the tilt. My mission in life can be summed up by E.E. Cummings. He said, "We do not believe in ourselves until someone reveals that deep inside of us something is valuable, worth listening to, worthy of our trust, sacred to our touch." I think one of the things that heroes do is they see in other people that deep inside of them something is valuable, oftentimes the thing that seems like the most worthless thing about them. That it's worth listening to, that it's worthy of our trust, that it's sacred to our touch. And what I hope you do when you leave here today is that you've seen something in yourself that's a weakness that's also a strength. But beyond that, you start to see in other people hidden strengths, and that you become a person who reveals to other people that deep inside of them something is valuable, worth listening to, worthy of our trust, sacred to our touch. Heroes are freaks. Heroes see strength where everyone else sees weakness. Thank you very much.
The Hero Roundtables are the global events that ask the question, what is a hero? You've just seen one hero talk. To find more and join the conversation, visit our website or social media.